And we're live. Hello, good evening, and welcome to BEEMAN.DEV Saturday night live stream, where I'm going to play with Formally, Angular, Tailwind, and well, let's see what happens more. Yesterday in, oh, I'm sorry. Yesterday in my BLS 15, I was online with Chow Tran, and we worked on an app together, which is the component store Playground. And I'm going to pop it quick up to the screen here. And this is the Playground. You can see it in responsive mode now. It's in mobile, small screen. But it's a to-do app. You can add items, hello, something. And these get saved and you can mark them as done and delete these things. Nothing too fancy here. What is fancy though, that it uses the component store. So we can take a look at the to-dos store. And this is the component store that we built. And yeah, so that's pretty nice. Thought it was a pretty nice stream. We learned a thing or two that we will update in Monday's stream. So Monday we will do a second part, and Chow will implement this workflow builder that we see right here. There you go, where you can add various groups, and each group can have conditions. These can be deleted. The groups currently cannot be deleted, but in Chow's implementations they can. And yeah, so that's this. And for now, what I'd like to do is take a look at implementing Formally, adding Formally to this project, and not picking a UI library. So Formally comes with, for those of you that don't know Formally, probably a better place to start. Let me quickly pull it up here. So Formally is a way to build dynamic forms in Angular based on a JSON structure or an Angular object or a JavaScript object. I'm sorry. And well, if you look at how this form here is defined, you can see it's very low on the templates. There's only this Formally form template that we're using. There's only the component we're using, and form definitions here. I'm a huge fan of Formally. I've been using it since ages. I've used it since AngularJS. There was a Formally, and never really did the other way. I helped a lot of teams use Formally. I think it's the best way to do Angular forms. And so it makes sense to have this implementation here. So what I'm going to do is install Formally core and add some custom fields. So that seems like an interesting thing to do. And before I get started, let me quickly link you all to a stack blitz. So that's edit, and that is Formally plain UI. So in the Angular community Discord, discord.gg/Angular, join if you haven't already. There was somebody asking me about how to use Formally without custom forms, without one of the UI libraries. So basically all custom. And you can definitely do that. The way it works here is that you register your own inputs. Let me toggle this. So here you see we have like one input, and this is the input that's rendered. And then if we go to the file where that's implemented, that would be this one, then we can see this is basically just a wrapper, small wrapper component around the type. So this is what I'm going to start out with. First add Formally, then implement an input, and then from there, let's see where we go with this. So without further ado, let's pop up a terminal. And I'm going to go ahead and yarn add as a def dependent, well, as a normal dependency, ngx Formally /core. And so this time, again, no UI libraries. Normally Formally gets added with one of the UI libraries, but we're going to build our own. And in order to do that, what I'm going to go ahead is here inside UI, I'm going to create a separate folder form. directory form, and inside here, I'm going to start UI.form, UI-form.module.ts. And this exports a class UI form module. And this will be an ng module that we import and use. Now here what we want to do is declare our own UI form component and also import Formly itself. So let's start by doing that. Here it imports Formly core module. That is what came from the Formly core library. So it takes a second to catch up with the package that I installed. So it gets auto imported. One second here. And then with this, I should be able to start defining my own modules. Now, what I also need is some sort of playground or place where I can use this, or where I can basically start developing it. Let me see, Formly module. Here you go, Formly module for root. This is the base configuration. And this for root can take several things. We can add types, wrappers, basically wrap around the type. We can add validation, and the idea is to make a fairly complete, production-ready UI form library that we can basically pick up from this project and put in any other project where we have Tailwind and Angular. Because yeah, I really like Tailwind, and I'd love to have a good Formly abstraction. So this is an attempt to build that, just that. So with that out of the way, let's quickly make sure that this works when we import it. We're going to import it here in UI module. Import it, and I might have to re-export it at some point. I'm not sure, but I will see. And I'm going to pop open the terminal here so we get any errors. We do have HMR. We should have HMR, so that's good. And what I think I'm going to do here for the time being, I'm just going to use this home screen that we got here, features home. And I'm going to use this for a second. And I'm adding I'm going to add a div here with some padding. Sorry, div with some padding. This will be like 16. And then the background, let's make it background pink, very light pink. Here will be my form. So with this, we should have a area here where we will create our form. Let me also make sure that this is only Y, and a bit more light wouldn't hurt. There we go. Okay, cool. So I'm not going to build this all from scratch because that is a waste of effort from the things I've already did. But let's make sure that we can at least render a form. And in order for this in order for us to do this, I always wrap around the Formly form with a custom component. So this is the UI form component, and this gets the add component decorator, where we give it a selector. Let's call this add form. And we give this a template. And here is where we actually call into Formly-form. This is the Formly form that we're wrapping around. Now what we do here is we take a form, which is a regular old reactive forms form group, take fields, take the model, and we take options. And we're going to go all the way, give these ones the same name in the component class itself. So let me quickly copy these over. And I'm also going to initialize them in case we don't pass in a form group. Then this will be the form group. And these are all going to be inputs. So import input from Angular core, add them here. Options is, I think, typed as Formly options, Formly form options. There you go. Pass in an empty object by default. Field is a Formly field config array. Just like this, and we initialize it with an empty array. Model. I'm not sure what is defined as a model by default in Formly. Let me quickly take a look. Figure that out. I'm Just gonna go any this way. Sorry, folks that are hurt by any. And here, this is something we're going to declare in declarations, import it here, and we're going to export it as well, exports. And now at some place where we want, we should be able to say, give me a form. So this is the first step you want to do when using Formly. Make sure you can render your form. That's what it's called, add form. We're going to import it, and there you go. Now, generally, I start off with my fields and my model. Equals model, there we go. And then we can create these properties. So this is also a Formly field config. Formly field config. From here. Formly field config array. And I generally don't type this, and I generally have helper functions that create these fields. But for now, I'm going to do is first manually and then create the helper function so we can see what we're gaining with that. And the model here that I'm going to pop in is just model name is BEEMAN. Nothing too fancy here. And once we render this, let's make sure that we don't get any errors. Looks like this got rendered well. But what we want to do here is have an input with a key of a name. And this corresponds with the name up here. And we want to give this a type, and type is input. Down the line, we can add more stuff, but let's start simple. We add a type here, a form field, and say key name and type input. And if we refresh this now, this should error out. There you go. That's good. So what we have here is the type input could not be found. Make sure that it's registered through the Formly module declaration. So this is the thing you see when you don't have any form fields registered. If you install the Bootstrap or, well, one of the existing libraries, things like input are generally configured. And okay, I'm gonna bump up the code size because I got told it's looking small. So we need to configure these fields, and we need to make sure that Formly knows these inputs. And if you install one of the existing ones, the graphical UI libraries, they will come with input, select, multi-select, but we don't have any. So let's create a directory types here. And inside types, I'm gonna say UI form input.component.ts. And this is gonna be the component that is gonna be our field input. So we're going to give it a component decorator, and we don't need to give it a selector, but we do want to give it a template. And I'm going to do this template inline. It's also up a little bit. I'm going to do this inline, and this will be my input. And this is a component as any other, so we need to register it here in UI form module, declarations, declare the form, and we can say type, sorry, name input, render this component. Make this visible that this is our input component. When Formly does its trick, we can see that here this component gets rendered by definition in the home page. So inside the home page, we define this here, the input key, and what you can do is basically duplicate this, and this will render out various times the same component. There you go. So in essence, you can see Formly as a component renderer, dynamic component renderer, because that's really what it is. And we use it for forms, and it has integration with a form group and reactive forms. But in essence, you could, if you want, you can probably build a whole UI in Formly. I never tried it. I'm not sure if I would recommend it. But yeah, that's definitely a possibility. Now, if we look at what I did with this input here, I extended field type. So this is a thing, a type that comes from Formly core. So let's go back to our Formly input here, and let's make this extend field type and import this. I'm going to import this from at ngx formally core. And now still renders. What we can now do is copy over the content of this method, and this method prints out the type, and it gives a reference to a form control. This is a form control you probably know from reactive forms. If you work with reactive forms, you know that this is what a form control is. Make this one return a string, because we got strict typing here. And for now, I'm just going to show the type. So this will render a couple of times the text input. So this is the input type. And this comes from the .this.to, and these are the template options. Now, if we look at where we reference one field, we can say, okay, template options. I want this type to be text. Okay, that's fine. I want this to be number. These are HTML types, right? So we say, give me an input type text, or give me an input type number. Let's make this age, and make this one email, and we say input of type email. And what this allows us to do is render out 3 fields that have the native HTML input type. And right now we don't do it, but if we copy over this piece of code here, this example template, and we go back to our UI form input, and paste this in, and we can now see, probably getting an error here because form control doesn't seem to be known. Let's go back to UI form module and import reactive forms module. There we go. Now when you go back to our input component, we see that form control here does get recognized. And this form control class is a bootstrap class, so we can get rid of that one. And what we should see right now, if we look at these fields, we can see that this is an input field. This is a number field. It's rendered that way. And this is an email field. And we can take a closer look by using the element inspector here. And what you see in this input here, input type email. I'll bump this up quite a bit because it's not visible. This is the thing that gets rendered out by formally. Input type email, and the other is input type text, and the other is input type number. So this is the way that formally works. There's not too much magic involved here. There are some things going passed in. There is a class, if it's invalid, then it will, and we have show error enabled. Let's make this class text red 500, and this is a class provided by Tailwind. And when we then look at this and we enter this text, it should now be red, and this is not red. Let's take a look why that is. That's 500. I was expecting that this thing would be red because it's not valid. Oh, it's not red. It doesn't work as I expected yet. And we're going to take a look in a bit how to do validation. But let me get this. But this is basically the way that we add a new type to formally. And this is where we have the normal type. Now, one of the common things is that a form type always gets wrapped, or generally gets wrapped in a div and has a label. So let's add that one as well. Let's implement this label here. Freddy, good to see you, Freddy. Freddy says, I didn't know about formally, and we built something like this for a component in our app. And this is what I've seen at a ton of teams where I worked. A lot of Angular apps that I had to look at how they could improve it had a custom implementation of some dynamic forms, and it's super hard to get this right. And it's even harder to make it as elegant as this solution, I think. So yeah, I'd recommend everybody check out Formally and start with a starter like Bootstrap or Material. If you use that, don't go and implement this all by yourself. But this is kind of a nice idea to look at how it works, like more of the inner workings of it. Yeah, we all rebuilt this several times, most likely, and it's a waste of effort. So let's go ahead and let me see. So we need a wrapper. So we want to have a wrapper around this. And what I do for this particular, for in this particular stream, I'm going to look at a something I did the other day. I'll show you in a bit. I have to go to my GitHub and go to my repositories here. And I search for plain, as in plain text. And I should have, there you go, formerly plain 4 days ago updated. So what I did here was basically extract the Bootstrap styles from formerly. And Bootstrap, I picked Bootstrap because it works with classes already, just like Tailwind. So it should be easier for me to pick this up. In this particular case, where I'm gonna use this form field module. And I'm basically gonna use the whole form field. So I'm gonna take this aside as a reference, and I'm actually gonna download it and make it accessible in my editor. So what I generally do in this case, if I wanna take reference from an existing app, in my Angular app or in my NX workspace, you can create a TMP folder. And this will automatically be ignored by your git ignore. So that's sweet. And we can use that to open the terminal here and git clone this repository. And now we can look here and see formerly plain. And now I don't have to go back and forth between my editor to copy stuff, which I just basically want to pick up. So I'm going to pick up this formerly field here and bluntly copy it over to my UI form. I'm going to build a wrappers here. Now this formerly has more stuff than I'd like because I picked up the whole library, but I'm going to clean this up a little bit. So I'm only interested in this stuff here. Not interested in source. I'm not interested in index.ds and package.json. I am interested in public API, and this is what I'm going to be calling index.ts. So this is basically my barrel exporting the module. And then for naming, so here I have UI form input. I'm going to call this UI form field, UI form field module, UI form field wrapper. Yes, and UI form field wrapper. And this should have renamed the fields. Well, it did not. Let's rename this. And I want to call this component, by the way, components, because I like to call my components so I can see on type of file what it is, component. Then see the file type, whatever type of file it is, and here, because it's in wrappers, I can see that it's a wrapper. And find create formerly field component, and actually I'm thinking about at this point not bothering about testing these, because I'm going to test this when I build it into the formerly, because at some point I'm going to push up a pull request for formerly. Now, copied over the formerly field input, the formerly wrapper, and let's make sure that this has a good name, UI form field module. That looks great. And here we're going to go back and call this one UI form field component. We can get rid of the selector because we don't use them. And reference this UI form field component right here. So we export it and then bam, import it right here. This gives us a nice, clean, lazy, loadable module, shakable, should I say, which I can then import here in the UI form module. So let's do this, just that. UI form field module, and we import it from wrappers. And from looking at this, I'm going to do the same for the input form input, UI form input component. So I'm going to go over here, copy this UI form field and make it UI form input. And whatever is called field will be called input. And same goes for the lowercase in. Now, only this one is different because we want to call this thing input without form. So cool. So we now have split up our form fields into separate modules. And I think this is a very powerful concept, because a form field is basically an atomic module with a component and whatever logic you want to have there. And you can control it, and you can compose it by using the formally logic, formally core logic. But what you need to do is register it. By the way, this needs to be types. You need to register it, and once you register these components, you can use them in your forms. And I think this is super nice because it allows for high reusability. Now, this means we don't need to do pass any things in the for root here. And what we instead do is say formally UI form input module. So we load in our modules here, and this still should work as expected. It shouldn't change. Let me see if we have our errors still. No, looks like we're without errors. And now we can tell our formally inputs that we want it to use our wrapper. And let's take a quick look at how this is done in the main example I have here, because the input field in its module definition here tells, okay, this is an input. This is a type with the name input. This is the component that I want to render, and this is what I want you to wrap inside. So we're going to take this one, and in our UI form input module, we're going to copy this over. Add it here, add it to the object here, and now I do want to display it like this. Let's look at the error. This is an error I never really understand. I know to fix it, I generally want to restart my server. Let's do that, and that's good for me to take a sip of water. Actually, even fancier, a sip of Coke Zero. Huh. So cool, generating browser application bundles. So if all went well, we should now have 3 form fields below each other, because they're all wrapped inside this form field wrapper. And this is basically how it works. So you can register components to be inputs or wrappers. An input can have 1 or more wrappers. We can do aliases, so we can see, if you look here at the input modules, you see that this input module also provides a string. So basically, if you say in your place where you use these forms, so let's open up the home component again, in the place where we use this thing, so you can say, okay, this is an input, but you can also say, you know what, this is a string, and that should also render the same thing that is defined here. So you can do aliases, and here you can see we have an alias string, we have an alias number, and we have an alias input. Okay, we have issues here, and this has to do with UI form input is declared by more or one modules. That is correct. UI form input should not be registered here, should not be declared here. Let's see if that rebuilds it. And if it does, we can look at how this works. Okay, that looks promising. And now what do we have here? Oh my gosh, come on. Is this really the way you want to do it tonight? So yeah, this is something I'm going to add in a bit as well. And this is one of the things that makes it support JSON schema. So formally comes with a JSON schema parser. So if you have any data structure in JSON schema, you can feed it into formally and it will render out whatever you define. It should render for that type. So if well, basically any type that you have in your JSON schema can be rendered out by formally, and it will do it in the exact same way. It will just look up a field defined with that type and render it. There's a few things nice about it. There's one of the things that nice that you have like full control of what to render, and you can even change it per module, because you can render fields by module. So you can basically override and say, I want in the whole app, I want my select box to be special, but in my admin module, I want them to be extra special and have a custom one. So that's super powerful way of going and configuring and customizing your inputs on a scalable way. So let's see. This works. Okay, awesome. So now we have here BEEMAN show error of undefined. Okay, let me check why this is. Cannot read property show error of undefined. Yeah, I know where the show error is defined. Show error is right here. Form inputs component, UI form input component, and here we have the show error. Something doesn't really seem good. I think I might, oh no, this is declaration. Declaration should be here. Okay, I'm just going to verify how this input module works. So input module has common reactive field. Inform field. Okay, so yeah, so this needs to UI form field module. It needs to depend on the form field here, otherwise it cannot render it out. In the others, we have common, we have reactive forms, we have forms, and then formula module here. This is all the same. So let's see what this brings us. Still erroring out here. It doesn't like it. It doesn't like what I'm doing. Let's see how this works. From the field input is the input type. We declare it here and we set it here as input. I'm going to just copy all this over, because in the end we do want this. Inside the module, I'm going to paste it all in here and then change the reference from UI form input to UI field input. This should basically be it. There shouldn't be more to this. I'm not sure why it's making life so hard. Okay, that looks like that fixed it. Okay, awesome sauce. Good, great. So we now have a string and number and integer, so we can define these fields in a different way. So we can go back to form, to the home component.ts. Close terminal real quick. So we can say input string, input here number or integer. That will all very much be the same type used. So here's a number, here's an integer, and we get these checkboxes. And another thing that's kind of nice, you see, it wasn't really intended to be, but you see that this is how it works. You can have multiple fields with the same key, and that all works. And one of the more powerful things, so you have template options here. You can define a lot of template options. I'm not sure if this already has the label. This inside, yeah, there you go. Hello there, this is a label. What you can see here is that this label already gets rendered. And if we look here, click right and then inspect, and we check here, we see that this is a label and it's been wired up to this field. So if I click on the label, the field gets selected. So this is all super nice how this works. The place where this lives is inside my form field component. We didn't really check this one, so let's make sure we get rid of the form group. Okay, so this is pretty nice. So what we can do here, and this might be a great way to start out styling these things. This is the form group, and in Bootstrap, this is a div, a blocking div. So it takes the whole UI and it has some padding and some spacing. So let's go ahead and add a border here and make this border pink and a dark pink, like 900. And see what that brings us, because that should identify. There you go. Okay. Now what I want to do is give this a flex and flex column so that the fields inside here will behave like normal divs, where one goes behind the other. So we can see that here. And some other things that we can do is add a little bit of padding. So do padding 2, so they have a little bit of space around them. There you go. And then for the label itself, what I think I'd like to do is add some padding in the bottom. And now I'm not a great designer, but Tailwind makes it relatively easy to be a great designer, so that's good. What I'm going to do in a second is go up to the Tailwind UI and look at some of their inputs, and probably also install the Tailwind Forms plugin. Maybe we should do that before anything else. But yeah, so this is how we can render forms, and we now have a layout, and we can do some fun stuff here. So what we can do, for instance, make this form a little bit more realistic. So let's say I want to have a string called name and say here name. Give this one type email, give it a label of email, and we're going to make it required. And we're just going to be with these two fields, and then email is going to be BEEMAN.DEV, and that should render out our two fields with a label and both being required. There you go. And we can now take a look at how validation works, because the field is marked required, but we don't get any visual clues. And what we can take a look here is that it does have the isInvalid class tagged on, and there is an invalid feedback message here, class here, but we don't really see it. So I think if we can give this, for instance, a block class to it, it might already be visible. Show an error, I'm not sure. So that's all nice things to figure out, but the basic is here. We have a field wrapper and a field, and we can now start working with these. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this border here, because right now it's no longer really needed. Yeah, this is basic formally, and then let's complete the idea. Let's wrap this up one more step, and that is actually submitting the form, because this is something, and it can be done in various ways. We have a model change here, and we can say on model change, on model change, we can take an event. So that's one thing we can do, and I've implemented this in the past. Just log out, log whatever we get. Let's add void here, get rid of the public, make sure that the editor is happy. And once this is refreshed, there you go. And you now already see that on forms change this, this emits events. So this is one thing, one hook that you have. You can just listen to this. One of the nice things as well is you don't need to know the internals of how Angular forms work. You need to know this one. And I've onboarded people with zero experience in Angular, and they're writing complex forms day one. They don't need to understand the internals. I think that's a good level of abstractions. I don't really understand why people keep on writing the templates themselves. This is way better, in my opinion. Now, one of the things I often like to do is have a button here, and I might have a button copied. This should be a pretty button. So let's call this one submit, see how it looks. Indigo, let's make indigo purple, because that seems to be the name of our theme. After all, it's NGRX, so little purple doesn't hurt. So this submit, and what I actually like to do, and this is something I didn't try, but I'd like to say it will be disabled if the form is not valid. We don't have any access to the form right now, so let's do that here. And what I'm going to do is say form equals new form group, pass in an empty object, and that's it. I don't do anything else with my forms groups, with my form groups. For me, a form group is a way to check if a form is valid, maybe get the values off of it, but I never ever declare something here. I think that's better done by a computer. Library like formally. So passing in this form, and now we can say if not this form valid, make the button disabled. Now in Bootstrap, this goes, you can see this. In formally, I think you have, in Tailwind, you have to specify this yourself. So let's add a click handler here and submit method. And then here again, there's several ways what you can do with this. You can say, okay, just give me form.value. If that's what you're after, that might be one of the easiest ways. So you can just say submit and the any, get rid of the public, and log out this value. Oh, I'll make sure that you all can see what I'm doing here. Implementing simple submit method, and then if now I hit submit, It doesn't do anything because the form is not valid. Mind that email needs to be provided. If I now do it, it will send my form. So this is one way you can send the values from your form. One other way. So cool, let's get rid of this onModel change because we're not going to use anything of this right now. And we're going to leave our app form simple as is. And here we have the button. And now I'm not sure if Tailwind can handle disabled form state. It's not really bothered with this yet. Let's install the Tailwind CSS forms utility. So Tailwind has plugins, and one of them is Tailwind CSS forms, and these utilities you can import in your Tailwind config. And inside your Tailwind config, you can define these, you can require them, and they will then load, and we can see most likely when we do this. So let's get rid of this one. Let's open the Tailwind configuration. Oh, Tailwind configuration here. And inside this Tailwind configuration, we can say plugins is an array. And here we want to do require at Tailwind CSS/forms. And this is the only thing we have to do. Now, these changes don't get picked up automatically. So what we want to do here is change the dev server. And with that, our forms automatically should look better. So I don't want to apply too much styling yet before I see how Tailwind forms look when they're styled with this forms plugin. By the way, for those of you interested, this application can be downloaded from GitHub. You can download them on github.com/BEEMAN, component store playground, and yeah, check it out. It's a pretty fun project, and Chow and I learned a ton working with it and talking with each other about this stuff. And specifically, let's check it here in a bit larger screen. Specifically, this workflow builder with Chow was something he worked on for his job, his day job. And we were chatting about how this works. And all of a sudden, I realized it would be nice to have some sort of demo app that everybody can look at. And well, basically where we can experiment and talk about this awesome new utility. So yeah, that's that. Give it a star if you pass around there. And with that, we should probably have this being rebuilt any second. Now, there we go. And here you are. Okay, cool. So what we could see, and I hope you paid attention there, is that this updated the base look of these forms. And this already looks a bit better if you ask me. And let me close this Tailwind config because there's not so much more to do. I'm curious about one thing, and that is what I can do with this form field, because here I said that it was flex colon P2. I actually think that they might have something for the label already, but it also might not be. Okay, so they don't have anything specifically for the label. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a look at how some of the Tailwind UI forms are implemented. So Tailwind UI is a library that you can buy. You can buy access to this library, and if you can afford it, I definitely recommend checking it out. It's $249, so it's not cheap, but it's definitely worth if you want to have. Well, if you don't want to hire a designer to build stuff, for instance, if you want to build a landing page with some pricing cards, you can just pick up these templates and use them in your own apps. I think this is awesome, and I'm very, very sure that this will make me super happy over the next years to go that I'm using Tailwind. So I figured I'd get a license. Now you cannot share this as open source, but you can use stuff in your open source apps. So we should be good here. So the license doesn't permit us to resell component kits based off of this code. but you can use snippets of this code in your open source project. So that should be totally fine and within the license. And here we go. Okay, so what I'm seeing here, I love this because this is actually what we want to rebuild. And we might look at some more the fancy stuff in another live where we do add-ons. Formally does support add-ons to fields. You can just declare them. And it would be nice to have some sort of example library where we implement a few of these. What I'm going to do first is I think I'm going to start out with this simple code example. There you go. Okay, love it. And I'm going to take this. Here it also explains. I'll zoom it up a few inches. Here it also explains that for these things you need to make changes in your config. Here it explains that you need to require Tailwind CSS forms, which we already have. So let's take this basic forms, move over back to my class. And I'm generally, when I duplicate stuff like this, I'll first dump the complete form on top of whatever I'm doing. Okay, nice. And this gives me a nice way to look at, okay, this is what they aim it to look like. And I would then rebuild this dynamic form to be generated the same one. So in order to keep being the same, I'm going to get rid of this padding here in the class. So that's the first thing. Actually, their class has nothing. So I'm just going to say, get rid of this class. And next thing I'm going to do is copy over the class they have on the label. Now on our label, we have class margin bottom 2. I'm just going to copy over this one. That should make it already a little bit more in line. Perfect. Now this is the big one. This is actually for the input itself. So what we can see here is that we have the label, and then here's the ng template field content. So remember that the wrapper wraps around the field. This is where it gets rendered here, line 25. Hola, Orlando, buenas noches. Gracias. Desde Montería, Colombia. De verdad, yo no tengo idea por dónde queda Montería, Colombia. Lo siento mucho. Voy a buscarlo de una con ustedes. Orlando is saying hi from Montería, Colombia. And I do live in Colombia, but I never heard of Montería, which I'm a bit ashamed about. But reality. Let's see. Oh, this seems like a village in northern Colombia, a city in northern Colombia. Huh, looks beautiful. Colombia is so huge. It's so big. Okay, so it's northern Colombia, and it looks like it's still. No, it's not Antioquia. Wow, lovely, Orlando. I'd love to visit Monteria once. Maybe if this is all over, that we can travel again. I'll put it on the list. I'm gonna definitely save it. Want to go. Cool. So here we go. Now, so this is where the form field gets rendered. Line 25, field component. Let's pick up this class, open our input component, and add this class basically just here. And with that, our form, there you go. Oof, I like where this is going. I really like where this is going. Look at this. Awesome, awesome. Okay, so we can do name, we can add text here, and that makes it, or let's add a small placeholder to our form component, home component here. Name, placeholder, please add your name. Email needs to be valid. So this should give us a bunch of, there you go, placeholders. Oh, lovely, lovely, lovely. Montería queda 8 horas de Medellín por tierra. Yeah, 8 hours on over land. So with the bus probably. Yep, it's huge. In the Netherlands, where I'm from, you can drive for 8 hours straight without leaving the country. I think, or you have to go in circles, but you cannot take any direction and be underway for 8 hours and still be in the same country, or you have to purposely do it so. But okay, awesome. Adding the fields here. So this is looking pretty sweet. I'm going to leave this here. And I think with that, we just implemented this field. Okay, no, there's one thing that we want to do, and that's this div. So around the input, there is in the design of Tailwind UI, there's a margin top. So let's get that one in. And that would be here. And with that, we can get rid of our field. And this is now first implementation, first round. And if you can already see this looks great. I mean, I think it looks great. In our home components, what I'm going to do here in this button, give it a margin top of 6. So we get a bit around this thing. Yeah. And we can get rid of our pink as well. Maybe we can make it white and give it some, let's do that. Give it some padding. So I have to figure out Tailwind, make it rounded and give it a shadow as well, because that's pretty. There you go, and a little bit of margin, 6. Is 12.6 as well, and get rid of this PY16. We should have a bit more of a card. There we are. Awesome, love it. Okay, so let's do another small trick here. I'm gonna do a flex container, and let's say justify between. And I'm then gonna have 2 buttons. One is register, and the other one is login. Now the register one is not the primary one. So let's, instead of saying background purple, we're gonna say border purple. And on hover, let's leave hover for what it is. And text is not white, text is gonna be purple 600. So we're basically gonna invert the register button. 600, border purple 600. And this should give us a fairly simple, there you go. Oh, I like this. I really like what I'm seeing. I think this also shows the power of Tailwind. On hover, we want to say, give us a 200 purple. So this should give us a purplish shade. Okay, pretty nice if you ask me. So yeah, I think we're moving along great. And obviously this needs to go somewhere else. So this would probably be an A, another button, and redirect to, like, let's take a router link to /register or something. So I think we went pretty, we're going pretty well here, pretty smooth, integrating formally with Tailwind. I really like how this looks. And let me see if I can add this validation error. Well, and help text. So what formally comes out of the box is a description. So what we can do here in name, or in our home components where we use this home component, where we use our form, what we can do is say, let's make sure that this is all a bit, that this has a bit more space. I can make this one a bit smaller, just like so. That will still work. And what we can do here is add a description. And be your nickname, something. And here on description, we can say, we will send you a verification. Now, this should render out, there you go. Okay, but it's unstyled, and that's expected because we don't have any of the Bootstrap styles on board. It's here, this small with form text and text muted. So inside here, we have form text and text muted. So this is basically your description. Oh, this is basically our description field here. And once we look at this code example, we can take a look at this class. And I'm just going to copy over the class, go back here, apply this class instead of form text muted, form text and text muted. And once this re-renders, there you go. Love it, love it, love it. Okay, I'm super happy how this is turning out. What I don't really like is this form, is the padding here. I think the easiest way for now is to do a margin bottom. I think that's how how Bootstrap works as well. There you go. This already looks better. And then ultimately, lastly, what we want to achieve is that these things show a validation method and the red ring around them when they're not valid. Because remember, this is now not valid. The button doesn't work. And when I add something here, it does work. Because name is required. Let's make email, that's because email is required. Let's make name required as well. So we copy this over. Why do I have these twice? That's the placeholder. Sorry, I don't think twice. I'm going to take the require tag here and add it back down here. And then both are required and both should be valid in order for me to click. So let's see how they do this in Tailwind. Okay, let me go back to the preview. What they have here is a icon inside this input, which is super fancy, but it's not at all a requirement for me. I'd like to be have this thing red text and a red outline around the input. So let's see how this is done. Okay, so this is probably the easier part. This is the email error class, which in our case lives right here in the form field, class invalid feedback. Style display equals block. And for this to work, we probably need to add a real validator. So this required is a type of validation, but it's not really a validator as such. I think if we show this one, hello test validation, I think if we show this one that it will appear, hello test validation, it just doesn't have a message. Let me think why this is. Let me think why this is. Okay. What I think I'm going to do is pop open formally and look here at validation, built-in validations. There you go. Required has a required validation. This field is required. It should be built in. App module, see what they registered here. Okay, yeah, there you go. So validators are there, but we need to say which validation messages it loads. So in order to achieve that, I'm going to pick this up, open our UI form module here, and inside the formally module for root is where I'm going to paste in these validation methods. Go over these fellas, right here, add them down here. That should give us, okay, so that gives us something. I'm going to do it the proper way and add a field, a folder here. No, well, validators / index.ts. This is where I'm going to paste in the whole shebang. Make sure they all return a string because we're in strict mode. Field is formally field config. Field config. What field is for now? Field is unknown and error also unknown. And your best guess is my best guess. It's going to be any for now. Should have at least characters. Awesome. And I'm going to get rid of these and make sure that my editor imports these from the validators here. Okay, so these are basic validation methods. And again, this is because I'm using the the hard way to do this. Now we go. Now we have our validation. Great. So we can go back to our form field and get rid of our hello test validation message. And that should be it for this part. So we now have validation being rendered here, and this field is required. Yes, it's required. And like we also probably want to make sure that it's an email, right? So this is something that's nice to show. What we can do here is custom validation, and I think this uses the Angular validators. So again, formally is just a wrapper around reactive forms. So there's nothing too fancy here. If you can do it with reactive forms, you can do it with formally. That's basically the gist of it, and your code will end up cleaner. That's basically a guarantee. It's a soft guarantee, but still, it's one in my book. So this is nice. We have this input here. What is not something I'm aware of currently is how to do this red border. So what it looks like is that this is the input, and this thing, I'm not really worried about this thing. I'm not going to do the inset right now. I don't really care. What I do care about is having this border around the input and this text being red. I think that's fancy. So in order to achieve this, I'm going to go ahead and pick up this class and going to add it verbatim to the input. And I think that should live here. Yep. Okay. Paste this in, pick this up and store it here for a second. Some craftsmanship, people. Store this one here, and now we can see, yes, okay, these things are showing red. Well, even if they have error, they don't have error. So then I think the complicated part is checking which live in both and which don't. And so I can, for instance, see text rounded lives in both. So we can get rid of, this is not a special one to add the other way. Let's add it all back in one huge list. This is most likely the biggest comment of Tailwind. Like, why would you hurt yourself and do 500 character line long classes? Yeah, that's a fair point. So block W full appears twice, so I can get rid of this one. Get rid of one of them. SM text SM appears twice, so we can get rid of one of them. 100 MB appears twice. Already got rid of that one. And now we conditionally want to apply the colors red, ring red, focus outline 1, and placeholder red, and text red, border red. So if all should be well, I think they render out normally right now. Perfect. And then I can probably say, okay, this is going to be something. Okay, I'm going to try and get this in with a dynamic class. Class names. Class names is going to go be a getter. Class names, and this is going to return if show error. You're going to return everything. Otherwise, you're not going to return anything. This we can get rid of the awesome. Okay, love it, love it, love it. Now, okay, so this is super powerful if you ask me, and this looks pretty nice. I think use a bigger border. Border two if it's valid. Okay, but this also jumps around. Let's not bother. Let's not bother with this. And another thing, placeholder red 300. I'd like this to be a little bit darker because I think it's too pinkish. There you go. Add the name. Great. Let's see. Shall we give this a go? Icon here. So what this, yeah, I think I have a nice way of doing this. So this can probably be handled right here. So this is a thing that we only want to show on show error. So just like the other one. This has position absolute. That means that it will be absolute to the top one that has relative. So let's make this one relative. If I got that from the example here. Let's make it rounded MD and shadow SM. I don't think I'm going to make them rounded MD and shadow SM because that's all styling of the field itself. Shouldn't really worry about it. So with these two, ooh, nice. Okay, this is coming together pretty nice if you ask me. Awesome, and it will then also work with all the field types that we have. So cool, what are we doing on time? I have no clue what we're doing on time. How long have I been on? For an hour. Seems like there's still people watching, so I might as well continue. Let me get a zip of call. Nice, nice. I really love how this is coming together. Now, one thing to bear in mind that this validation, this wrapper, will be used by the other fields as well. So one of the next things we can do is implement the select box with some options and take a look at a checkbox and some more drop downs. But I think this is a great moment to make a commit and to quickly take a look. I'm going to do a partial commit. So for those of you who are not aware, git add -p is a partial commit, shows all the changes. Yeah, actually, I don't want to commit this yet. I'm going to skip on this file. So this is the homepage where we use it. I don't want to do that. I want to do it in a separate commit. This is also the home module. I'm not interested in this. UI module, yes, I'm interested. Yes, I like to see this change. Also, always the log file. And now I'm going to say source app UI form is going to be committed as well. And now we have a nice focused commit that just implements the formally library. And we can say feature implement formally implement UI form library. There we are. One of the things that's nice of doing this is that it also made me realize what we can build for our form. So what we can build for a form, well, there's a ton of things, but I think we're going to do an authentication screen because we already have like the base set up here. And let me close this terminal, open the file browser, and see what we're going to copy and paste. So I'm going to pick up this home component up, and it's going to be called auth. And now inside here, I'm going to open the terminal. I'm super lazy. I'm going to say search and replace everything that's called home to auth and home to auth. This should search and replace the stuff. Awesome. So now I should have auth module, auth component, auth everything. And then we can get rid of all the stuff that was in home before. So we don't need that. Links. We don't need this. What we can say is email and password. And string. Email. This one. Make this, and here again, we can just say type is password. make password here, password right here, open UI form input module. Say password is a type called password. Password input, and it says default options, template options, type password. And this should give us a nice password field in our auth and not in the home. So let's move back to home, and in home we can get rid of all this. Now have it in auth. Get rid of these and of this whole shebang. Here you go, home component seems untouched. Now lastly, get rid of the UI form module here. Don't need to import it anymore. And then in order to navigate to our auth page, let's add a route. Copy home, paste it as auth, auth, and auth module. And with that, we should be able to navigate to the auth section of the page. So here we are, auth. Awesome. Here. Oh, expression changed after it has been checked, error. Hello there, that's been a while. Auth components, this is probably the culprit. Get rid of this placeholder, do a label type and a required here as well. Get rid of the password description, get rid of the placeholder as well, just make it required. And that should, there we go. Should also not have this dreaded error. Okay, make this empty by default. Refresh it here. Error. Why? Well, people probably know why. I just don't know why. I'll get around it for now. Like, I should understand how this works. I'm sorry, I don't understand how this works exactly. I don't care, because at some point it will be get rid of these simple changes here, and this should now form. Okay, it does not. Let me experiment with a second. And here we are. Okay. Oh, just forget about it. I'm not worried a second about this. So just pop these back in here, and I'm gonna live with that error for a bit. Get rid of this one and get rid of the ngf here. And for the time being, I'm gonna set these to false. That's what's causing it. It's false, and it doesn't expect it to be false. Cool. Okay, so this is auth, and do register login in various ways. So that might be a nice thing to look at. Yep, there's several nice things we can look at. I actually just want to make sure that we have a drop down here, and let's make that the first one. So I'm going to go ahead and look at select here, because remember, I'm going to blatantly copy Bootstrap. So here in types, let's give this a folder of input. Here we are. Let's move this one into input. And there you go. And now give the server a bit of time to understand these changes. And there you go, rendered back in. I was too fast with the restart. Now we can go and pick up this select again. Now things should probably go a bit faster than before. We have the majority of this already done. So I'm going to go ahead and call this one index.ts because that's our barrel. The naming is going to be UI form select module. And that will rename the class. And this is going to be UI form select component.ts. And remember, in this implementation, I'm not going to worry about type testing. These two can be gone. Rid of them. And this one, I'm not even going to bother with the barrel either. Just like this. And then get rid of the selector here. Now you can already see that this is quite an involved component. So this is the select box. It's an advanced select box. You can have single select, multi-select, and yeah, there's a ton of functionality here. So it's going to be interesting to rework this. So this is going to return any or with take these. I see a few red lines and select properties. Okay, yeah, this might be caused because formerly select components should be here. Formerly field select is now going to be this one. Select. Why is it not happy? That's probably the better question. So what I want to do here is import at least the UI form field module, because that's the one that we're extending here. Oh, is this one not happy? An Angular module. Well, are you sure? You really think so? I would bet it is. See what happens when we load this one in. So we're going to rename this one. It's going to be called UI form select module. And this is going to relay, it's going to enable us for the forms select and enum, which is being used by the JSON schema forms. And down here, UI form include UI form select. Load it in. Let's see if we get any errors. If we don't, we can start adding our select box, which at this moment is still styled. There you go. It's already an Angular module. Okay, awesome. We have no errors at this point. We're probably already also not rendering it, so that might be related. If we go to our auth component, what I'm going to do here is say add a key, and this is going to be language. And say select, type. Language is the field. Language. And here we're going to pass in options. And the options is going to be an array with 2 objects. Value is en. Label is English. The other one is going to be Spanish with ES. Now this should render us a select box. Have you ever made a select box this simple? I bet you have not. And must be people checking this out and like, oh, what the F was I doing before? And I don't judge you if you think that. I totally understand. Let me see. So what I want to do here is quickly print out the model. So the model here is whatever we pass in. So we should have a preview. There you go, email password is blank. Now if we pick one of these, this already works. The only thing that it misses right now is a little bit of styling. So let's give it this styling love that it desperately needs. And then we implemented another box, another button, another checkbox, I'm sorry. So this is a single select. We also support multi-select. So let's do multi-select. And no, let's say multiple. We need to set multiple to true, multiple to true. This will allow us to select two of these items. Okay, and this also changes the input from being a single field, single value field here, ES, to language. So let's make the options different. Actually, language is better to select multiple. I guess. Now let's make this primary language, UI language. UI language. That's one that's configured in the UI. And we have other languages. So that should give us two different fields. And we can, of course, set these as a default, because if we pick these ones up here and we pass them into the form here and hit save, then this is the default if we have a new a reloaded page. So let's get rid of this one, for instance. Oh, and then, yeah, so that's it. Now for the styling. This should be fun. Let's see where we are right here. So in components, I think I'm going to just search for the select needs. Look at this. Oh my gosh. Simple custom. So this is the simple native. This is probably the one we actually want to go with. I mean, this is super nice, but it might be a bit too much. Look at this. Would you look at this? This is awesome. Here with fancy little icons. Okay, so we can definitely do a cool job at making some interesting UI elements. I'm just going to go for the native one right now. Then I'm at least sure that this is working well. I'm going to quickly check how they implement this. But I think it's not a select. Yeah, here you go. It's not a select. It's like a faux select where they do a span. And I really want this native select to work as it is. And then label, we don't have to worry about label. We are only going to worry about the class that's applied to select here. So take this one, pick it up, copy it over. And we go back to our select component.ts, select component.ts. Now, I'm going to go ahead and make another getter and call it class name. See what I got, where did I use it? Did I use it in the input fields, UI form input class names? That's it, and it's going to return a string, and this is going to return this whole string. This is the whole string. And then class names is going to be applied here. So where we say class is form control, I think that this appears twice. Yes, it should. And so this is going to be class, and this is going to be class names. And with that, in the refresh, awesome, all at once. Look at this. Okay, I'm not really happy with this space on the side. The other one probably has the same, yeah. And this is because of this icon here. They want to give it some space. Now, if it's a multiple, we don't care about these spaces. Probably the easiest way is to get rid of this. This is right. So this is right something. Heading right 10. There you go. This is the one. Most likely. So now we should refresh and it should not show it. There you go. And then we only want to apply this to this inbox. So that way, if we do this click, then the icon will still be visible. Yep, I'm going to go ahead and just add a literal class PR10 here. That should do the trick. Or shouldn't it? Is it applied? It is applied here. I know it also applies here. Okay, interesting. This is actually multiple. I'm sorry. I'm at single select here class. This is ER10. Now we should have this second one. There you go. The second one is white, and this one has some spacing, which I don't really see, but let's make sure that it stays here. Okay, sweet, sweet, sweet. So I think we can do another commit here. Okay, so this is going to be actually, well, actually, I'm going to say git add source app UI, just add only the UI stuff, and this is going to be a single commit that adds the select field. Yep. Implement select field. So that's that. So get rid of terminal here. And let's take another look at what we can implement from the Bootstrap library that we have. So checkbox might be a good one. Text area. Let's go with text area. That's probably the most useful one. Now, here's over to text area. Get rid of these two here. And move up this whole bunch. And I'm going to get rid of this source. Rename this one to be index. No, we don't have a. This is going to be UI form text area.module. This is going to be UI form text area.component.ts. Get rid of the text spec file because we're not going to test this here. Get rid of the selector here. Now you can see that this is already getting super clean. This is just as simple, it's about as simple as our form component, our simple input. So do the class names trick because the class names tend to get large-ish. This is also probably something we should figure out for doing the error on the right now we don't have this covered if it's required. So that's one thing to take into account. And but here, this one is going to be called UI form text area component. And then here in the module, declare them. This is going to be the UI form field module. I love how this is coming together. I keep repeating it, but I really do love how this is coming together. Text area here, import it here, and that should give us a text area field. So then in auth components, what we can do is say, add a bio is key type text area for bio. And it should not be text, that should be text area. Form already doesn't render. There you go, text area. Love this. Yep, that's error was expected. Let's see, what do we have here? Forms. Let's go to the subsection of forms. Somebody is playing with fireworks outside. In this about field, this is just what we want to have. About text area. Here we go. Let's steal this class. There we are. And inside our text area component, this is going to be a class here. Copy and paste right. This is going to be it. Let's move back to the auth screen, A to H. Auth. Ooh, sweet. Okay, so this is a text area. By default has one line, and let's make this bio 5 rows. So we say 5 rows. And there we are. Doesn't this understand rows? Come on. Abstract form control is not assignable to type form control. I don't really understand what it's coming from, but I know how to fix it. Huh, it's already there. Sure if I can fix it here. We can try to work around it by restarting the dev server again. It's like 4th time and restarting it. Not really happy about that. Cool. So let's see if this fixes the issues we have, and if we can, if it does, we can take a look at the other fields, which are checkbox. So we do have form field, we have input, we have select, we have text area. So what we need to do, still do, is radio, checkbox, and multi-checkbox. Now, from looking at these type specifications, these are large. They're quite evolved, if you ask me, but this is mainly because the difference in classes. So there's a bunch of classes that get applied here. Ooh, this might be useful for our show error stuff, but that's another site. So there's a bunch of classes getting added here, and this errors out. So what do we have here? What I'm going to do is, okay, this is select. I was not looking right. I was looking at the text area. This is select. Select doesn't have this form control, whereas input does, and text area also does. I'm not really sure why this didn't fail before. As in, we have seen the select box render out, so I'm not really sure why this is coming along right now and not before. However, that's how it is, and sometimes that's how it works in our industry. So this will now re-render, and we're going to visit auth again. I definitely should have a button. This field 5 lines big. Yep. So this is coming together pretty well, and we can do some nice things with this with Formly and the component store. So I'm definitely interested in checking this out. For me, for now, I'm going to wrap it up here, and I'm going to make a small commit here and add this text area. Partial, add source app UI. Source app UI, and this will add a git message implement text area field. Go. And after that commit, I'm going to commit the auth stuff. And we are implement auth module. And with this, I'm going to wrap it up, and I'm going to make a small quick pull request. So I'm going to push this file up here, push it up to GitHub. And after that, we're going to say hub browse, move into GitHub, and let's take this out into its own separate screen. I'm going to create a quick pull request here. This is implementing Formly. There we are. So cool. If you want to see this and if you want to work with this stuff, feel free to download from BEEMAN Component Store Playground. If you check this right now or right after I send this, it will be in the pull request, but this should be merged by like tomorrow. There's a few other stuff that we're merging in. Monday, which is 7th of December, I think, I'll be live with Chow Tran, and Chow and I will look at how to implement the condition builder, and we might even use some Formly in that. I'm probably going to stream the other, implementing the other form fields as well, but it's going to be very similar to the rest. And with that, I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you all very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye-bye.